Hello. Welcome to the Exatos.
Well, I think Thomas is at work, so we traded Thomas for Nate from Reality's Ours podcast, which is great because it's like a tag team wrestling thing. We're like, I can't, yeah, and they pull in Nate from the ring. Nate, I don't think you've met David yet. Have you ever met David? Have you guys talked before ever yet?
I'm not sure.
Dude, Nate
Nice to
does
meet you,
Reality's Ours with Thomas, and David does MK Ultrasound. MK Ultrasound is like synchromistic work where you mix films and soundtracks together. He's like the dark side of the rainbow incarnate, and American Time Machine has joined us as well. Good to see you, Kurt. What's going on? I know that Nate and I just did a show recently, and we talked about Bigfoot and a lot of things, so that's pretty cool to see you there. I also want to point out that simultaneously to this, we were just wrapping up on the Team Rabbit Hole. Raphael and Jim are interviewing Chris Knowles from Secret Sun. So if you haven't already, make sure you see that afterwards. That's going to be worth your time. But how are you guys doing this week? They're bright auroras on Jupiter, I
don't know who wants to jump in first. I'm doing great. It's bright and sunny. Well, kind of. It's a little rainy, actually. I'm lying. It is bright out, though. It's a great week, dude. Yeah, we're having fun. It's really good to meet you guys, Kurt and David.
Hey, yeah, I saw you recently with Thomas. Good stuff. Awesome. Yeah. I don't know how we're going to do this actually, because Thomas is like working every Tuesday. You're now Andreas, so the timeline is kind of.
We'll flex it out. We'll figure it out on Thomas's schedule. I got to figure it out again, but we'll reschedule everything properly. It'll all work out. Are you barbecuing? What's going on over there, American Time Machine? Is that a barbecue pit?
Yes. If you like meat, I like meat a lot. And so, if you guys come to Pennsylvania, I can make you some of the best barbecue you've made in your life. Today, you can see the smoker right there. We're trying out a little bit of Jamaican seasoning on the bottom, the jerk style. And we're going to let this cook at about 250 for 3 hours. We got chicken going on, and we have hot sausage. And we also have a little bit of chicken that's going to be extra spicy with some homemade ground chilies and also some of that adobo seasoning you get like in the Hispanic aisle. It's really good stuff. But yeah, and a little bit of lime juice to give it a little bit of kick in with that really smoky flavor. But yeah,
we just
think amazing. So I'm about to get off. No, we can make good barbecues. I promise. Like it's there's nothing like barbecuing with friends. Right now, I don't have friends here, but I promise they're on their way. So or I'm just a psychopath and I like to cook for myself only.
But it looks like
Yeah, it's going to be legit.
art he was in. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's just like there's like the mega clip of him with all the meats. You know what I'm referencing?
Which thing?
Zuckerberg had like a thing where he had like
Oh
this. Yeah, where he he keeps on going on about the meats. So there's like the supercut of all the times where he's saying the meats. Oh my god,
that's true. That is the Zuckerberg smoking meats picture.
Yeah.
What's weird, think about that, is you know where this shot is, David? You know where this picture is taken?
No, tell me.
Pennsylvania?
This is taken. No, this is taken on 7th Street in Santa Cruz.
No, it's not for real.
He has a big house in Santa Cruz, right there, in the beach area between like the Twin Lakes Beach and 7th Street. He has a huge property there, and this is where he. I mean, I think he lives multiple places.
I probably have been on the other side of that fence there. That's crazy. Okay, trippy.
He owns yeah, exactly. That's what's weird. You know, like he ended up in our neighborhood, taking over our community. It's crazy.
Let's hang out. Does he still do MDMA? Because he looks like he
looks like he does.
He looks kind of perma-Eid, right? Is that what happened? I think, and then I don't know. I'm sure he has the best. I don't know if you do it like how you get the serotonin receptors back or whatever. It seems like he has. It seems like he's gotten his receptors back, which maybe it's ayahuasca. I don't know. There's not very many things that can rebuild serotonin receptor sites, but
iboga maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I somehow got all my brain cells back, I think, or most of them. I'm still pretty happy. Yeah, I've done it.
Adrenochrome, or what's your solution?
I don't have one, dude. I have done my weight in mushrooms, and I think that has helped a lot.
Yeah, synapse rebuilt me.
I mean, from my understanding, the only substance that they know of that has actually been proven to rebuild serotonin receptor sites is ayahuasca. Although, like when it comes to the brain cells, they used to say that you couldn't rebuild brain cells, but apparently there's a study on cab drivers. My old boss, when I used to drive a cab, used to like go off about that study that was like, no, because cab drivers have to be aware of time, space, up late, like keeping track of all these things, and they were able to prove that they were able to get back brain cells. So I don't know.
Nice. Well, we have a new pope. I was going to ask you about that before I ask you about neuroplasticity, but they're probably related in a weird way too, because designer drugs in the Vatican City kind of thing. But do you have any thoughts on this? I was thinking about the Pope earlier because we spent the last month with that movie, the Conclave, talking about a trans pope, and then there was a transvestigation onto his skull and everything else like that. Like, do you have any weird feelings about the Provost guy? What do you think?
I love the transvestigating. Those are the funnest. Those are the funnest rabbit holes to go to. I got some friends that go deep into that. Yeah, they can tell by the shape of his shoulders and the hip to shoulder ratio and all this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's trans, but who knows?
It's pretty great. Here's the one, right? It's the one where it's here's his skull with a male skull. Nope, that's just way too high up there. Female skull, perfect. Perfect.
I see nothing right now.
Yeah, I don't see anything either, Andreas.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry. Here it is.
There we go.
This is the male skull is a little funny looking on his face. Female skull fits perfectly. I don't know.
You know what? I'm convinced they're right. Yep. Definitely.
Any art student can look at the head to the rest of the body ratio and figure it out, but I don't know.
Do you think that like this is do you think head injuries make people think this way, or why is it that there's a natural inclination in some people to say that like celebrity, like that George Bush is really Tom Clancy, or that Trump is Bo Bridges in an outfit, right? Isn't that the one? Bo Bridges is supposed to be Trump in the plastic surgery or something. Like,
no,
why?
I thought it was Andy Kaufman. No, I forget.
Andy Kaufman's good too. No, but why do you think that that's a natural response, or do you think that happens because of like a brain and like a head injury that you start thinking things are all the same thing?
Well, dude, there's also the guys that say that like every single actor in America is playing multiple roles, and they're like, oh man, who's the big one, right? There's like Brad Pitt is also playing. Oh man, I can't. Anyways, they play multiple roles, and there's all these different actors that are actually the same person, and they just do a slightly different like skin suit, and then they play multiple roles. I don't know. Those are fun. There's
only so many ways to arrange 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. That's kind of the deal there, I think. But yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Your talk with Leo Zagami, Excellent, always excellent. Like it's one of those things where it's like I would love to like be a part of that conversation, but you do it so well and it's so informative. And like what a perfect person to have to discuss the Pope right after. Like it was like that just so you had him on at that timing felt really synchronistic. You know?
Well, it was crazy because it was definitely synchronistic in the sense that I'd been planning it before the Pope was selected, and I was going to have him on the week before. I was like, let's wait a couple of days. We'll do it afterwards. And for it to be, you know, I titled the video, I scheduled the video already, so it was already made. And if you went to the YouTube page, you would have seen this was the first video titled Pope Leo in history, as far as I can tell. You know, no one had, because he hadn't chosen his name yet. He hadn't been chosen as Pope. So the fact that Leo is going to be talking with the Pope, we said Pope Leo, that's pretty interesting to me. That we, you know, if you were to look it up, this is the first video titled Pope Leo, and it came out a day or two before. I mean, the title existed a day or two before there was a Pope Leo.
There's some really crazy symbolism to that, and it's a kind of apocalyptic because, like Leo, obviously, it's attribution with the sun, and so like even the way that aligns itself in the like when you arrange the 22 major arcana of a tarot deck as the Vesica Piscis, and you can basically because of if you look at the Roman numerals, the way that they're arranged in like the Crowley deck, you'd end up having what should be Aleph on one side because it's the first, and would be Lamed on the other, which would correspond to Justice, or in Crowley's deck Adjustment. When you do the switch that he has with the Lust card, which would originally be Strength, that corresponds to Leo. So you'd actually end up, there's an arrangement where you can end up with the sun on one side and Leo on the other as Strength or Lust. And so there's symbolism there of like Leo's being equated with the sun. Like Crowley's saying, you could just call me Little Sunshine when in court, when over the 666 name title, you know, they're like, oh, isn't that, why would you call yourself that? It's the beast 666. And he's like, oh, it just means sunshine. You can just call me Little Sunshine. So it's very interesting to have the Pope at this time have that like association symbolically with the sun as a Leo. And then the fact that you had Leo Zagami.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then so, I mean, Leo, the victorious Lion of Judah, the last sign of the Christian zodiac, fulfills what previous 11 signs appointed to Jesus. The Lion of Judah, this victor over Satan, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, is triumph. In God's zodiac, the lion stands over the Hydra, the long snake representing the devil, which is the largest separate constellation in the sky. Hydra stretches across the sky by more than 100 degrees below the constellations of Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. So there's also kind of an Ophiuchus connection there, like the lion and the snake, and then the idea that Mother Mary steps on the serpent. Yeah.
Tet. So Tet would correspond to Strength or Lust, which is from its Phoenician and Chaldean roots is actually a serpent. So you have that, and also obviously the demiurge, that figure of like the lion with the body of the snake. You know.
Yeah, the Boath. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Boath for sure sticks out. That's something like so. Yeah, this is the new Pope in a lot of ways.
It's funny, dude. I was actually I was reading articles. I found some from the darker side of the internet and some of the regular side of the internet. We were talking about Pope Francis this morning, actually, because the Nazis want to claim that he's a Jew, but also the Zionists want to claim that he's a Jew, and so they're kind of working hand in hand, looking for him. And so there's some articles out, like I guess he has some German Jewish ancestry and mixed with some like Black Cajun ancestry as well. It's kind of interesting guy. Or any interesting lineage as well. But I do think it's funny when they're both like fighting each other, but also trying to prove the same thing. It was pretty funny this morning.
There was a funny meme that I saw earlier. It wasn't like exactly even a meme per se. Let me see if I can find the picture of it though. Where is it? Or back? Oh no. It's not in my Synctank group. It's in the based group here. Here we go. Wiki article. Robert Francis Provost's Predator stunt work. So this isn't real at all. Robert Francis Prevost, future Pope, served as the stunt performer for Predator Alien in 1987 film Predator while simultaneously working as a priest. He continues clerical work before ascending to the papacy in 2025. While this isn't true, I recommend everyone to look it up by typing Prevost Predator, because if you are Pope Leo Predator, because if you start to look into it's a great way to find other articles about the Catholic Church and predatory practices with the Pope. That's
You're saying this isn't real at all. This is not, because this looks like a Wikipedia thing right here.
Exactly. It's brilliant. But what it does is it makes you want to Google it. And then if you Google like Pope Leo Predator, as accused of failing to properly investigate allegations, or you could type in the same Robert Prevost Predator. You'll get the same thing. I had a video that was titled Predator Pope, and it got taken down, or it got demonetized or something like that. So that might already
get demonetized for saying this in the show right now.
Just saying the words right now. Yeah, I think there's a lot of effort to make this guy look like the good guy. But it's interesting because he was associated with a number of circumstances where he failed to act. That's what they keep saying, is that he kind of helped shuffle people around. And it does really remind me of the South Park about the Pope and the South Park. Well, there's like a few episodes because.
I know the one you're talking about. Okay, the different one. Yeah.
The Secret Easter Society one also. So there's the one where you find out that they just cover up child molestations and they have a deep cleaning room that comes.
right.
But it's also the American Catholic Association, American Catholic Society. They have ninjas that will kill you if you don't go along with the program. And it's crazy to see an American Pope from that perspective, that the American Catholic Society is so different from the Vatican. But I don't know. Thoughts on that? Maybe
he's not a Jesuit like the previous Pope. The previous Pope was the first Jesuit Pope. Am I right? That was the story.
Well,
I believe so. Oh, it's been. I think there was previous Jesuit popes, but long. I thought there were. Yeah, but he was the first one in a long time, and
Grockett.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, this guy is Augustinian, right? He was.
Augustine order is really close, in my opinion, though. Like, I think you're pretty much the Jesuits kind of control them. There's never been a Jesuit Pope. So
but Pope Francis was a Jesuit, no?
No, Francis was a Franciscan.
Well, that's weird. Okay. I remember mainstream sources at the time saying that. So because he was like another level of monastic, right?
So
like
Pope Francis was associated with the Jesuits due to his membership in the Jesuit order before becoming Pope. But technically he was no longer a Jesuit in the formal sense upon his election.
Oh, come on, isn't it like once a Jesuit, always a Jesuit? I mean, we're not talking like he just went to a Jesuit school like Trump or freaking Martin Sheen or something. It's like Although Martin Sheen is actually a Jesuit, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, there's not a lot of escape from there. So when you type that out, actually a lot of popes had been members of the Jesuits. They just don't refer to themselves as Jesuits once they become pope. That's crazy.
How can you this is the thing, it's like the Rothschilds or something with Judaism. Like, these aren't practicing Jesuits really. Like, I've seen imagery of Martin Sheen participating with some Jesuit ritual where he's got the fake blood on him with the crucifixion, whatever they're doing, but like it doesn't make any sense, because you think that Martin Sheen lives a Jesuit lifestyle and everything that's required of that. Like, there's no way. Whereas like Pope Francis, he did live that way apparently. I mean, technically speaking, like with his living quarters and it's weird.
Yeah, so Pope Francis joined the Jesuits in 1958, but wasn't ordained a Jesuit priest until 1969, because it takes years. You have to be super well educated. You have to do some weird, secret agent mission where you like build a church in Burundi or something that's actually a cover for the CIA, and you have to serve in all these different ways before they give you any power. So he served as a Jesuit in various roles, including provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina from 1973 until 1979. But upon becoming bishop in 1992, he was no longer bound. Bishops are not bound to religious orders, so he was no longer bound to his Jesuit vows. By 1992.
Is that what the meaning is in a chessboard? The directive in which they can go. Isn't that what that's symbolic of?
Diagonally. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting to see a Jesuit suspicion in America. We always have had Catholics that don't trust the Jesuits. It seems like they're like, the Jesuits are the bad guys, or to the Americans.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is that there's a certain dignity that's traditionally ascribed to the Jesuits, which is why it's such a vulnerable order for people to want to attach themselves to because it has that reputation. I was going to say though about the bishop thing with the diagonal moves is like they say kabbalistically in the Zohar that the klipot, the outside ones, they rule temporarily the lower worlds of the Kabbalistic tree through the diagonal pathways, of which there are 12. So there's like symbolism to the, you know, the bishop moving in that route. So it's like it's like you know, because the klipot mirror tetragrammaton, so it's this kind of like fun house like, you know, they're mirroring the order that exists in nature in our own intellect. And so the idea that what organized religion exists as it's not the thing in itself, the order that we see in nature, it's this replication of it. And so it makes sense that the bishop would align itself with that directive symbolically.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's also kind of funny that the as you said, like the intellectualism or the civility is like the kind of respect that the Jesuits are given, because they're also looked at as, I mean, like the way Pope Leo, the way Leo Zagami was saying, Jesuits are looked at as being hyper atheist or the creators of the woke ideology, like the new social Christian religion that kind of has replaced Christianity. That's associated with the intellectualism of the Jesuits as well. And Franciscans kind of play into that, because when they suppress the Jesuits, they're like, okay, well, now the Jesuits can't own any land. Let's just give all the land the Jesuits did own to the Franciscans. So the Franciscans move in there. And of course, it's through the Franciscans that the Franciscans wore the gray, right? So you had the Jesuits and then the Franciscans wore gray. And that's interesting. Also looking at suits. I was thinking about this the other day. Certain places, people wear black suits. And it seems like those are Jesuit places. Places that wear gray suits are pretty common too, and those are Franciscan places. And then there's brown suits, and the brown suits. Who are the brown? Is it the Benedictines, or which abbots were brown? Is that also Franciscans?
I thought Franciscans wore brown, and maybe that's just because of the association from Robin Hood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Franciscans were the brown, and then the gray friars are also Franciscans. So there must be some reason.
Friar Tuck was a Franciscan, no? I mean, excuse my ignorance. I don't actually.
Oh, so in 1897, Pope Leo XIII combined the observance of the Alcentrians, which combined the grays and the browns. So it was Pope Leo that united the two orders of the Franciscans originally when they were replacing the Jesuits. And then there's also the Mary, like the Society of Mary. I think that's the other one. Yeah, the Marianis. Yeah, the Marianis Pontifical Rite.
Well, that's an interesting symbol. I'm not familiar with that.
A priest survived the anti-clerical persecution of the French Revolution. 4 branches of the Marianis family. They have another really weird logo as well. Is this it? No, where's the other one? They have a whole other logo.
Daughters
as well.
of Mary Immaculate.
Yeah.
December 8th. What's going on there? I don't know about this.
Yeah, formation. Men who pursue a vocation in the Society of Mary follow intense formation process that leads them to examine themselves in spirituality. Contacts learn about spiritual institute. Yeah, like the feminine, like the secret orders. I mean, they're not like secret per se, but there are societies with secrets or orders with secrets, right? And yeah, the Marianas Trench, how deep does it go? This idea of like Eris or Sophia worship, and the idea that femininity, you know, is this major aspect of God that's hidden. That was something I wanted to bring up the other day, because I did this whole episode with Noel on Hinduism, and we talked about the Dugas and the Asuras, the Suras and the Asuras. And one thing we didn't bring up was Ashura, the wife of God, right? And so that idea of like the wife of God, you know, is at one point banned, and then the Catholic Church have secret societies to kind of rekindle that belief in Ashura, but we use it as Mary, because Mary is sort of the incarnation of Ashura.
Right. Well, that's one of the weird things about the Trinity, if you're relating to it, comparing it to like the Kabbalistic Trinity, is that what we would call the Holy Ghost would traditionally be associated with Bina, or the mother aspect of God, right? So then the daughter would be Malkut. It's the 2 Hays of Tetragrammaton, right? Which is interesting, like what I was saying about the bishops moving diagonally. Like you could relate everything in Kabbalah to the chessboard, because it's even in terms of like the queen can move every which way, right? So it's like the queen as a title that exists, you know, whether you're talking about England or elsewhere, it's like she would be like Lilith. She'd be the replicant of that principle, of that feminine aspect of God, right? So she's a placeholder that exists in the interim of the fall, right? So it's like, yeah.
That was the other one I was thinking. So Society of Mary. So there's the Marists, and they have this interesting, make it as small as possible. Anyway. They have this interesting symbol, which is an eye made of stars, of pentagrams, above a hexagram, above the weird Catholic spider thing. And you brought up South Park earlier, spider, and that's kind
What's the number of stars here? I'm trying to 1,
2, 4, 6, 8, 10. What was it? Sorry, 3, 6. You count. I'm getting confused.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is it 12? And then the 13th is the 6-pointed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in relating to in the dollar bill, where you have the stars that form the 6-pointed star above the eagle's head, you know, so you have the symbolism of the 13. Like I was saying, there's 12 diagonal pathways that exist in the Kabbalistic tree, but the 13th pathway is a vertical pathway that they pretend is a diagonal, and that's Gimel. So that's where you get the Masonic G, right? So the G is in the center of the intersection between heaven and earth as Chokhmah, Bina, and Keter. And then you have Gevurah, Tiferet, and Chesed. And so that intersection of heaven and earth, you have the G at the center of the Gimel. But in order to get from Bina to Chesed, you have to pretend that vertical pathway is a diagonal, making it the 13th, which would correspond to the high priestess. So like I was saying about, you know, the queen being like a replicant in our order, you know, in the world, in the order of the intellect, kind of replicating that principle that exists in nature. So like the Kabbalistic tree communicates the order that exists in nature as this lightning flash or this tree or whatever it is that this, you know, the Fibonacci sequence are the ratio that makes up all organic. And then we replicate that in our various systems. And so the G is like Gimel is like central to that. So it's applicable here. Like when you look at that symbol, you see the 6-pointed star, right? With the 5-pointed star. So, you know, you're like, here's the 13th point, right? So this is the equivalent of like the Masonic G with the square and the compass for all intents and purposes. Kind of a trip.
So,
legit.
Well, I have a question on that. A lot of occultists will say a prayer, and part of that prayer is saying behind you is the 6th-rayed star. So, like, I actually haven't explored too much the symbolism of that, particularly the number 6. Like, obviously, there's a lot of references to a pentagram, but specifically in reference to the 6th-rayed star, what is the significance of 6 or the 6-sided star?
Well, you know, you have 6 days of the week, and traditionally in Jewish mysticism, you say those 6 days actually spiral or twist around the 7th day, which is stable. So it's the meaning of the Sabbath. To keep the Sabbath holy isn't just that you do all these practices, it's actually keeping in mind the nature of what we're existing in. So like we're literally saying that these 6 are twisting around the 7th point, which is communicative of like basically cell division or all this pattern that we've observed that exists in nature, and us trying to replicate that pattern. And so making it so that we say the days of the week, we're going to like basically recreate this pattern that we've observed in nature and in ourselves, that insight. And so, and that insight itself is like a lightning flash, you know, like when you have a moment of clarity, you know, there's no thought, it's a direct perception, and then thought comes in immediately afterwards to replicate that perception. So there's always that, you know, that divide between the actual like insight itself and then what thought manifests, you know, or what thought manufactures in response to it. And then we build everything, all of our systems based on that replication. So that's, I guess, the meaning there.
So we the most superior musical time signature is in that of 6/8. That's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. There's that do re mi, the way that it's all twisting around the 7th, right? Same principle, and actually even the color wheel as well. Do you know what I'm saying? You have like the primary colors and the way that that you have the 7th in the center. It's the same idea. Both sound and color have that. It's kind of a trip.
That was pretty cool. I think the most interesting things that you can write in a musical standpoint, like it will be people playing around with what you can do with thirds. Thirds, which, divisible by 6, but certainly not a whole lot of mainstream music will be written in signatures of 3 and 6. Some of them will, of course, but I think when you get down into beats, and specifically a lot of beats that you'll hear from a lot of various artists, maybe some of them will be fringe, but the third will play a very, very important part of that. And I think drummers might find certain iterations of playing in thirds to be very difficult, but I think they rather enjoy playing them when they get to incorporate them in ways that they feel pleased to do so. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I think there's a lot of
the Eastern and the Western, or even beyond that. Like, I know that they say that we're not actually hearing the way that music is produced now isn't actually technically accurate to what it once was. So like, even like what Mozart actually, what that sounded like at that time with that instrumentation, it's not the same as what we have if we're listening to Mozart on iTunes or whatever. Yeah, I'm no expert in that, but yeah, I understand that there's a big gulf of distinction there.
So yeah, there's I guess a couple major things in the musical world that might make it sound different. Obviously, life itself, like, there's so many changes going on at all time. It's like, well, how can you be sure that what you taste now tasted the same 1,000 years ago? Well, we kind of can't, but there are some just suppositions that we make. Specifically, a lot of orchestras might use slightly different tunings. I'm not sure exactly, but there was a point in time in which universal tuning did become slightly different. But now there's like, music is just so wild on a fundamental level because, I think this is somewhat related, but the distance between all 12 tones, it actually isn't perfect. I'm not sure how to put this perfectly on the top of my head, but like, if you wanted there's a certain type of tuning that you can play if you want to make the key of C sound really, really amazing. Like, you actually have to, like, the standard tuning of a piano has to be adjusted to make the key of C sound in perfect harmony with itself. And so, yeah, mathematically, there will be a certain level of dissonance in between each individual note that we have to accept in order to play a chromatic scale and be able to cover like all of the keys and all of the notes simultaneously. And so, like, it's actually, I don't know who's theorizing it, but I think there's something to be said that you can actually take certain parts, you can introduce a certain amount of dissonance towards in a very large, we'll say scale, or a very large chord. If you find the right amount of dissonance at the right level, you can actually do some dissonance cancellation. I think a lot of classical composers really were onto that idea. And so I think classical isn't the popular mode of digesting music. So I think there probably is a lot of things about music that were understood in this time, but have kind of been lost, lost just due to the way that we've been accustomed to digest and reproduce music nowadays. So yeah, it's very possible that orchestras might have sounded very different. I'm by no means an expert, but I've done a little bit of reading on, how the orchestra evolved over time. And yeah, it definitely would make sense. It's possible that orchestras, even now, they might sound better because, like, we just have so many more people to throw into the pool of we have so many more people to try to get, better musicians out of. So yeah, but honestly, who really knows? It's very.
What do you think about this guy? Cerebral Organoid says music has nothing to do with tuning. Do you have an argument against this logic?
Yeah, I would say, melody is a fundamental aspect of music, and you can't have melody without, tuning. So yeah, that's just, it's fundamentally false in like 3 different ways.
Yeah, I'm no musician, but my pain has been instrumental.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's yeah, tuning has everything. And so specifically, it's why, like, even if you go in, like, you can do this experiment yourself. You can open up your own synthesizer at home if you have, you know, a workstation, and you can just, you know, play, just make it a bass, make it a sine wave, and you'll find that certain frequencies will rumble your house. You know, why are you going to play a C2 or a C3 note instead of a C4? Because, you know, that's not the point of the bass. The bass is supposed to make you, you know, vibrate in certain ways. There will be certain vibrations that will, you know, shatter your windows before other notes on that scale will do. So it's like tuning is absolutely everything. And of course, yeah, everything is an exaggeration, but there's so much that you can do with it. If you're not incorporating that in your music, there's just total elements that you're ignoring. But, you know, there's always been melody, and of course, there's always just been the beat. We're primitive creatures when it comes to the beat.
Yoko will shatter your windows.
Yeah, right.
And wine glasses.
Yeah, I think harmonic resonance, you know, tuning is really important. Melodies without tuning is music. Are you talking about rap, or like, what do you mean melodies without tuning is music? Do you have any idea what this guy is trying to say? You might have to explain it better, Cerebral Organoid. I mean, we'll have to talk more if you're trying to say this. But what do you mean melodies without tuning? Do you have any idea what he means or no?
Like, you can write something, and of course you will recognize a song if it's played in a different pitch, played in a different key. You know, Moonlit Sonata is still Moonlit Sonata if you play it. I don't know what the original tuning is, but we'll say, you know, C minor, D minor. You're still going to recognize it, of course. But the question is, well, how much does one tuning drastically change your mood? I think it's very significant. It's very significant how something can change your mood. If you take a melody and you totally invert it, there's lots of musical inversions that get made. Like you can take a lot of pop songs and then like invert the melodies, and all of a sudden it becomes dark and deep. And so it's like, it's a mirrored melody, but it sounds completely different. It evokes a much different emotional state within you. So
also like unusual rhythm signatures, right? Like that's one of the things that I love about Tool is they'll often with every album they'll do, just like Pink Floyd used to do, they'll do something that's never been done before. And like at some point there'll be some song that it's like, wow, has that ever happened before? I had a music teacher in high school that used to talk about that with Tool at the time. And even then, you know, it hadn't all happened yet. So like that, I remember he was saying that before, like when you listen to that Lateralis came out, like Lateralis had that, like they used the Fibonacci sequence in the song Lateralis. Like that's like the rhythm signature of the thing. Like, and you're like, has anyone ever done that before that? Like it's a very specific rhythm signature. You know, I don't know how applicable that is really with what is being discussed, but there's something to be said for experimental, you know, shifts. Like I know that, like I was saying, Pink Floyd, like Fat Old Son on Atom Heart Mother, like that effect that they did, where there's like the guitar keeps going and they come in with the other instrumental in the midst of it, and it like does this, like it feels like it shouldn't work, but it totally does. Like where you do something, I don't know if you know what I'm referring to. Like, you guys up to that? You guys Pink Floyd fans?
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to remember which song Lateralis is, but
Tool's Lateralis.
Oh, it is Tool. Okay, that's what I was like. I was like, isn't that Tool? Yeah, I thought.
Tool, like Pink Floyd, with every album would do something that had never been done before. Yeah, something that's like you can go through music history and you can never find another example of it. I mean, even like you know, yeah. So I mean,
even the synthesizer sequencing in Dark Side of the Moon, for instance.
Yeah, are using instruments ways that they hadn't been used before. Like Danny Carey, like is perplexing to people who play tabla apparently, because he didn't learn it in any traditional way that most people have been taught to do tabla. Like if you learn tabla, you're supposed to be able to like vocalize everything that you're doing without the instrument itself before you can play it on the instrument and stuff. So he like bypassed all of the traditional stuff, but could utilize tabla to you know, to make it adaptable to music that it normally would never be played with, because it's Western instrumentation and not Eastern, and yet it still works amazingly. Like this the Beatles did that. Like George Harrison did that with the sitar, right? Where you're like, whoa, you wouldn't think that it could be used that way, but they'll make it work, you know? Like, I don't know.
What about 432? Crispy Cruz is asking, does 432 really feel more right to you guys? Like 432 hertz? Do you guys have a feeling on 432?
That's what people say. I mean, I've heard it. I've seen it. There was somebody, you know, Rain Dance, Andreas, but there's like, you know, my friends would put on this event in the woods, and we would have like special guest musicians come in. And there was one guy who had built an instrument that incorporated both, like at the same time, and he could go back and forth between them. It was a weird looking thing, you know, it's stringed, you know, but he would play, here's what this sounds like, and then here's what this sounds like, and then merge them together and do this whole.
So it's like when Tommy was Thou Shot the Room on film and video kind of a thing, like just so you could have both. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't remember that one. I don't know, like 432, I played 444, 440, 432, number of different sounds for my dad in tones. He's not a musician at all. And he said that, I forget which one was like 440 sounded like robots to him for some reason, like a Russian robot, he said, like a spaceship landing. And that 432 sounded like kind of like, this is kind of, you know, it's like kind of hippy dippy, sounds like, you know, nature or something like that, which I thought was a pretty good accidental proof if you could acknowledge that without knowing any better. But what about you, Kurt? You make music. Do you have any feelings about 432? Do you believe in the superstition?
Okay, my mic's on. Sorry. Well, superstition is fun. That's the best way I could put it. But yeah, you can play around with adjusting. Like a decent way to just get to 432 is like post-production. You can just modify your pitch by a few percentage points. And well, of course, that'll affect the pitch of your kicks and whatnot. But it's not in a way. You can just see how it sounds, of course. But yeah, there's always options. Sometimes, like you can of course use a frequency that's not used, of course, just if you want to have it have a certain level of distinction, I guess. Eventually, if you go too far, you're just writing in a different key at that point. But yeah, it can be fun just to produce your music in different, like play them like side by side and just see just what does it evoke out of you. Yeah, I think that you don't have to obsess over tuning, of course. I don't necessarily think it's all about a big mind control conspiracy, but it's just, yeah, certain tunings, they can be nice if you like them that way. Dude,
look at Cyanide Pill's comment here of, are you guys familiar with the, I don't know how to say this. How do you see this?
Are you guys familiar with the aulos being two different size? Is that right? Aulos?
Like two different tuning forks, and when played together, it's like that looks like stereoscopic visually. Is that like the musical equivalent of that?
So this is kind of the aulos. I think that's how you say it, right? The double reed pipe. I hope I'm saying that right. But sorry, the question is two different sizes, like two different tuning forks, and played together. Hits the notes on the flute isn't capable on its own, right?
This is an interesting idea, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm not hip to that. It's like it's reminding me of the panpipe kind of thing, but different, obviously, because like two. Like, yeah, no, I'm not familiar with this, but it sounds interesting. Yeah,
Egyptian. There's something awesome about waves and how they move through the air, and so like there's definitely going to be a certain combination of waves that do different things. So this seems like a totally plausible idea to me. But as far as what that means, well, it's like, yeah, I mean, music is awesome, but it's also why there's little things, and it makes it hard to a certain extent to produce music in a sense, because it feels like you're always trading something off. For example, if you listen to a song on speakers and you're very far away from those speakers, you're going to get a very different mix, because certain sounds are going to dissipate at farther distances. Your sine waves are, very jagged. When you have very jagged waves, those things dissipate a lot quicker than, or not sine waves, sorry, saw waves. Saw waves would dissipate a lot quicker than sine waves over time. So that'll change. how you hear an effect, depending on how far away you are from a speaker or from the sound or from the band or whatever. But you can also use that to your advantage. You can, you can do some theoretically wild things, maybe some things that can't quite be put into words. But yeah, it's all to take into consideration.
Can I tie this back? So like I don't know if you guys have heard this effect you can do with a speaking. Coming back to like Tool, which actually relates to the Mary thing we were talking about too. So you have there's two songs, Wings for Mary Part 1 and Wings for Mary Part 2. And there's the last song, I believe it's the last song on the album, which is more of, or maybe it's not the last, but there's a song on the album that is not even just an instrumental. It's like kind of like a tonal building sound effect.
Wings for Mary, kind of like the Maristas we were thinking earlier. So that ties back to
right. Exactly. So, but there's a thing that there's a trick you can do, and they set it up so that you can actually like it's more than just beat matching. It's like you can take the two versions of Wings for Mary, and if you take this other third song and you put it in a slot, so one of the Wings for Mary is longer than the other. The difference between the two is matched by this other song. So they set it up so that if you put that song first, follow it for the shorter Wings for Mary song, it'll fit like a slot into the other one. And if you play them with all the volumes up equally, he does his own harmonies. So like you could play each song on its own and it's one thing. And so, and then it's communicated with the album art itself because it came with stereoscopic glasses. And so they have the two images, just like an Oculus, and then the two images become one. So it becomes three-dimensional, which is a really cool effect. But he's showing you that you could do it with the audio as well. So like it's kind of a clue to do this thing. And he set it up so that you can't go wrong if you line up the tracks. Like if you have like an editing program and just put them together. And so, but it's hard to explain. It's almost like it makes the music three-dimensional, which is not really how you phrase that, but for all intents and purposes, you know. But yeah, if you haven't heard that before, it's a really cool effect. I bet on YouTube or something, somebody's just put them together for you so you can check it out. But yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Nate, you've been kind of in the back here. Do you have any thoughts on music and tuning or any of that stuff? I got other questions too.
My family is very musically inclined. My wife is my son actually has perfect pitch. If he listens to something, he can jump on the piano and replicate it for you, which is pretty wild. Wow. It completely skipped over me. I don't have anything to contribute to this besides that I like that, like the superstitious angle, like you were saying before. I like that maybe they're trying to occult this and hide this from us because this is the way that we were supposed to listen to this, right? And they've made this like where it's supposed to almost be like, I don't know what it is, but it's almost an attack harmonically on us, right? Where they've changed the music. So, I mean, I'm the tinfoil hat wearing guy. Unfortunately, I don't have much experience with the music, but I enjoy music.
You had a weird situation recently I wanted to kind of harp on. So Shane Gillis was talking about how he was fired from SNL for racist and homophobic jokes, and now he's going to host the show. And is this a metaphor for your life? I know that you had you know, Nate has one of the best podcasts. I know, like, we think of ourselves as pretty great, but I liked your recent 270. You talked with AJ about the elite, you know, the occulted history and the elite and everything. This idea that there's kind of a secret that the laymen aren't supposed to know, but this is what keeps the elite kind of aware of what's going on. But you got in trouble. I don't know if it's okay to talk about that. I think you already talked about this publicly,
absolutely.
Right? Like, someone found his stream, you know, basically someone found his content, and he had a normal job, and the people at the normal job didn't like that, right? Like, basically, you're like kind of like full in though, because you have to make a choice between being a square or just being yourself, and you're going with the self. Right?
I'm trying to go self. Yeah. There are many people trying to interview me right now to try to go back to normal work. And I don't know if I want to. I want to spend time with my family. I want to be able to make money on my own doing what I love, which is yelling into the universe. So I'm going to attempt to do this professionally if I can. I've got a little nest egg to make this happen. But yes, I had a normal, high-paying, good job, aerospace sort of type of job, and they did find my podcast, specifically a type of podcast that we were trying to push the envelope as much as we possibly could, and so they found it, didn't like it, and my professional working with that company is over. So yes, I am trying to make this full time now, dude, and it's been a lot of fun. I get to spend more time with my family. I get to see them. I was working ungodly hours, dude, and commuting like 2 hours a day just to get there and back. It wasn't fun. So I'm living my best life now, dude. It's great.
Well, I mean, it's funny.
The program and still get punished. It just happened to David Hogg, right? Like he just got booted from the DNC for like not meeting their diversity criteria or whatever. So it's like, dude, I don't know.
No, it's because he went on Bill Maher. It went on Bill Maher, and Bill Maher made fun of him. That was the thing. Did you see that? Did you see that clip? Oh man! So he goes on the Bill Maher show, and Bill Maher's recently super upset at Democrats because he can't rebuild his house after the fires or something like that. Right. He's gone like so hard. So he brings in Hogg, and Hogg, he's like, "So what are you doing now?" He's like, first off, he's like, "Welcome back to the show again for the what is this, the 8th or 9th time?" He's like, "This is my 3rd time." It's like, "Yeah, sorry, it just feels like seeing you so many times here." Anyway, you're like he's sick of him already. And then he's talking to him. He says, "You know, so what are you doing now? You're like the chair of the DNC. What does that mean?" And then Hogg has this answer that's very like, well, you know, we manage and we look over and we check for positive this and that results and try to find like entropy that we can cut and try to really like focus on the. And so Bill Maher's like, okay, so nothing then, right? You just do nothing for the DNC. It seems like that was the end of him in a lot of ways. Like once Bill Maher did that, they kind of just shut him down. It felt like, but I mean, they're just cannibalizing themselves.
He's all over the place, right? I mean, like he's shooting to be, you know, politically incorrect, like it's the name of the show, and he's tried to be consistent.
Yeah, whereas we have like Nate's like, dude, I'm right here, have sex with me, you know, I get it.
Right.
Like, well, politically incorrect, and you did this last thing is like Nate did the David Icke interview like recently. You're the reason we're gonna have David Icke on the show, or like more or less.
Oh, yeah,
right? So thank you for that. Yeah. So it's weird that they're saying they're upset at you for like racy stuff, but only after you start doing something like that. I don't want to say it's like David Icke's fault, but it is pretty weird, right? That it seems like you're kind of a little too hard hitting for them in a weird way. You're not just some like comfortable figure. You're actually doing stuff that actually does hit.
Well, David Icke is just like, I follow him on Twitter, and man, it's like there's nobody that's not a target for him. He does not care. There's not like either side or anybody on either side.
He's unafraid, dude, and unapologetic. Yeah, he's the man.
he doesn't care.
I wanted to go through and find the link to it, but like you have so many shows. Actually, I didn't realize how many things you've been doing. Look at here's one with me. But how far back do I have to go to get to the David? Clint
shouldn't be too far. Yeah, Clint Russell, Nephilim Death Squad, all those fun guys. Let's see here. It should be right around the corner. Probably.
There we go.
There's David Icke.
245. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was interesting. What did you think about, like, you've done this twice now, right? Didn't you talk to him already?
3 times.
3? This is crazy. So how did you find David Icke to be? Like, what do you think about him from your interactions?
He's fucking brilliant, dude, and he doesn't pull any punches. He's extremely honest, and he tells you exactly what's on his mind. Dude, he will go any avenue that you take him. He's unafraid to talk about any topic. I love and respect David Icke. Absolutely. There's nothing he's not afraid to talk about.
How do you think he's changed in the last, because I remember I saw him speak live in like 2007 or something like that. Now it's
more information, right? So more information has kind of guided where he's going now, but for fundamentally, he's never changed anything that he's still the same David Icke. And that's what I respect the most about him.
So do you think, in terms of like belief structure, though, his newest book kind of pushes, he's still kind of pushing this idea. It's not like all about reptilians, though. It's more like we're in a
that was a phase. I'd love to talk to him about that.
Well, we will.
Yeah, that's exciting. But he had a whole thing with like Alice Bailey's like Lucis Trust, where he ascribed to a lot of the same like belief system in like his earliest books, and so you can see him reference them a lot. Like I think they were very influential to him. I don't think that he was ever a member. In fact, if somebody claimed that, I would very much doubt it and believe him if he said no to that. But I mean, I was impacted by Lucis Trust when I was younger, like probably at the same time. Like it's one of those gateway things. So I think that kind of opened him up to esoterica, and occultism, which is not one of the worst routes of that because it's really just an offshoot of the Theosophical Society, but their affiliation with the UN and all these things, I can see how I've seen people go down kind of like a conspiracy rabbit hole in regards to David Icke, saying kind of like he's been influenced by them, but it was obviously inspiration for him. So I'd like to talk to him about that, but
I just had to click a button on Lucis Trust website that said, "Okay, I understand," which just felt a little ironic. But Kurt, have you heard of Lucis Trust? Do you know what we're talking about? Alison Foster Bailey, Treatise on White Magic, the Invocation of the United Nations. Have you heard of this? The
Invocation of Christ is what freaks me out. Their annual giant invocation freaks me out. The cosmic Christ that they're trying to bring about. Sorry.
No, please.
Why does it freak you out exactly? Because like I'm very familiar with
what they're trying to bring. I don't know. Their Christ doesn't seem like my Christ.
Yeah, well, the Great Invocation is, they say in it specifically, we are not talking about the God, the unknown God. We're talking about the God who has many names known by all of the different peoples. So already that's kind of interesting, because a big thing about Yahweh or Hashem, or you're not supposed to say his name. You're not supposed to, the name is supposed to be kind of secreted away. And yet this idea of maybe like the architect of nature, the Lucifer, like the Grand Orient Law and Lucis, that the light is somehow the more known thing, because light is illuminated and illuminating. So we have more information about Lucifer than we do about the darkness. And I mean, this is, that idea that God is being transmutated, because the idea of God's been transmutated, not God itself. Man thinks of God now as this source of light, God is light, etc. But God is older than light. Light is something that God says, let there be light. So really God's before light, which implies darkness to an extent, and it explains a lot about Luciferianism's obsession with light. So I don't know, his thoughts on Lucis Trust.
Yeah, I got seated next to a dignitary on a flight from London to Sweden one time, and I brought up like Lucis Trust to her with their like that their headquarters is at the UN and this whole thing. I was like, do you know about these people? And she went to me, oh my God. She's like, you see them like they'll be in like purple robes. And she's like, and they'll walk really slow, like a meditation walk. And she was like, we're told not to ask about them. We're told not to bother them, that they're doing spiritual work. And she was like, I've always wondered about them. I was like, so you don't know anything really about them? And she's like, I've always been curious, but no, I don't know what their deal is really, and so it's kind of a trip.
See here, it says, from the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth to the hearts of men. May Christ * return. So that's, I feel you, Nate. That's pretty weird that you have to go down to the index here. Let's see, where does it start with the asterisk? Many religions believe in a world teacher, a coming one, knowing him under such names as the Lord Maitreya, the Imam Mahdi, the Kalki avatar, and the Bodhisattva. So all of this right here, I think this is, I had a friend who was really freaked out by the idea of Lord Maitreya, right? What do you think about, do you know this word Maitreya? What is the Maitreya?
Yeah, so this goes beyond Alice Bailey. This is where when you're looking at that it's an offshoot of the Theosophical Society, you see what she's taking from. The weird thing, just to qualify, like whenever you're reading almost any Alice Bailey book, more than half, maybe 75% of that book is going to be quotations from various people, which is kind of amazing. Like the first time I read an Alice Bailey book, I was like, you can just do that? Like you could just publish a book and have it be like mostly quotations. I was like, that makes it a lot easier, like a little bit in between each quote. I was like, there's a lot of quotes I find inspiring. Can I just make a book out of other people's words? But I'm not really answering the question. But I mean, you're right. It's their own, they're qualifying. When they use a term, they're not using it the same way most people relate to it, especially if you're talking about like a gospel Christian and they approach this, they're like, wait, what are you talking about? And it's like, Alice Bailey is like, well, this requires a lot of study to get to what it is that we're pointing to when we say this term, which is really crazy because it's kind of babble-like, like it's like no one can understand each other's speech if it requires so much. Like this is kind of one of the things that bothers me about like the current left ideology, is that a lot of times somebody will use a term And you're like, wait a minute, why are you using the term like that? It's like, oh, well, you actually have to read these 5 or 6 books before you can begin to understand how I'm using this term. And so no wonder it's hard to define the word woman, for example, because it's like, oh, well, you have to read these 5 books on gender before you understand what we mean when we use this. It's like, okay, I don't even, we're not, because how are you supposed to have a real communication if you can't even embrace the same definitions for the most basic of words? And so when you look at theosophy beyond Blavatsky, like more Alice Bailey, like Blavatsky's relatively easy to understand if you know the context of the time at least. So like she's one of the first people to bring Eastern philosophy into the Western scope. So just there you have kind of a discrepancy if you're looking at traditional Eastern philosophy. Like if you were to read a translation of Patanjali, you can see that she kind of matches that but takes certain liberties. But like Alice Bailey takes it to a whole other level, because she's then taking all this other European occultism and projecting and kind of like fusing it with the Eastern philosophy, I should say. So like it's not, you're like, it takes a lot of study.
British, Western, kind of a pagan British perspective on it, right? And then you get this sort of this is where I think a lot of the ascended master Jesus stuff comes from. The idea that Jesus was an ascended master, and not to say that there wasn't already this idea from non-Christian Jews, right? That he was maybe a rabbi or a political revolutionary, but really this Eastern perspective that he had some sort of achievable life path that people could find their ways down. What do you think about these atheist Saturnites? Random. Sorry, I meant... But just generally, like this idea that people say they're atheists. The one that really sticks out, the reason I brought it up was Bill Maher, because Bill Maher during his Religulous show, once he went full, I support September 11th, and it was, like he started wearing all black all the time and pretending that he was some sort of solution to religion. That to me got interesting, because when you think that that all other religions are inferior to your belief structure, then you've created what you think of as the best religion. He's got this empirical religion. And in his doc, he's interviewed this guy who's Lord Maitreya, the Christ, right? Have you seen this where there's this guy talking to him? What was this about? Like he says all of these things to him. It was pretty crazy, because essentially this was the most religious conversation I've ever seen Bill Maher have.
Well, what he was doing with this whole Religulous thing, just simply put, was to find the most extreme people that he could find representing organized religion in order to kind of like make fun of it. To speak frankly, it's kind of what Vice did with you with the Hollow Earth thing. It's like, can we find the most we're looking for somebody to represent this thing so that we can, I don't know, like make a spectacle of it. So like he didn't like, it felt disingenuous, like that whole documentary, because it's like he wanted to find the extremists to be representative of the whole religion, of this whole, like, beyond like a sect. He's like, okay, now here, so this felt to me like another example of that. He's like, I got to find the most extreme person I can find, so to basically make a spectacle of. But I don't know. Yeah, it was weird.
Well, so we had this guy, and that's this guy like Cream or whatever his name is, right? There's this guy, and he was telling Bill Maher essentially that Maitreya is here already, and Maitreya is amongst us, and that Maitreya has appeared on television already, and through the most common man, through material like television, has like been in the hearts of every man and expressed great truths. And this is kind of not too far after they were talking about September 11th. And that's interesting to me, just because, this is something that Barely Human, Joe, you talked about this as well, that Elvis's concert was this first major synchromistic event where billions, I think 2 billion people saw the Elvis concert. And then there wasn't anything like that. Nothing as solid as that. I mean, there were like the Persian Gulf and everything for Americans, but the biggest unifying spectacle in history before then or after is the September 11th, 2001 attacks, because everyone everywhere were watching it.
I thought that was kind of like the moon landing would be an example of that, but you're saying
moon landing is good, but I don't think everyone saw. Not everyone saw.
Is that where the connection comes of like Elvis on the moon? Like that's like one of the go-to like conspiracy theories for the tin hat.
Do you believe they put a man on the moon? Hey, Andy. Talk to who?
What's that?
Have you talked to Miguel Connor? Do you know who I'm talking about? Gnostic
No.
Radio. Dude,
Oh.
he just wrote a book actually about Elvis and how he was the greatest, dude, like magician of our time. Like he blew my fucking mind, dude. Elvis was
I do believe that.
man. I gotta
Yeah.
hook you guys
So-
up. You guys would have the best conversation ever. Miguel
So-
Connor is
Yeah,
like
please
Totally.
do. Yeah.
I want to go off about something related to that because
Sure.
it used to be that if you went on to the Nashville Elvis Museum website, there you could still find this elsewhere, but it used to be on their official website was a list of Elvis's library. And speaking of theosophy, like he included in that was all the Blavatsky stuff. So he had like the Secret Doctrine, obviously, and Isis Unveiled, but it was like the books on yoga that he had. If you were to have Noel look at it, he'd be like, "Oh, nice," because it's like, I mean, for me, I'm just like, "Oh, he's got the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali there." In other words, he was really well studied, and so like if you watch the Sophia Coppola movie that came out recently called Priscilla or whatever about his wife who was. I think he met her when she was 14, 15 years old and got like permission from her dad to like basically like it's messed up. So it's really not flattering of Elvis, but I question certain parts of it. Like I don't question certain parts of it. And other parts I question mainly because when it gets into the Eastern philosophy stuff, I don't believe what they're giving him his proper. Like I don't buy it. Like because the bits that I've gotten from Elvis, just like not just his library, but just like from my understanding, his relationship to Eastern philosophy, like they just treated it like all it was like autobiography of a yogi. And that was like, he just had this it reminds me of what was done from Oliver Stone with the Doors movie. Like, don't get me wrong, Val Kilmer delivered like the best performance you could ever hope for Jim Morrison. But the actual, like when they have him speaking about Nietzsche or anything like that, it's just like, this is not what it was. Like, this is a total myth version of it. And so it was like, Sophia Coppola like wanted to do this Elvis depiction, this, what do you call it? A biopic that was just like not going to be that thing where we just put Elvis on a pedestal and instead do the exact opposite. But then it didn't feel like they were doing him justice in this area. So I couldn't help but wonder what other areas they weren't doing him justice. You know, like he's basically just treated as a predator, and he may have been, but I don't know. Yeah.
When you look at Elvis's outfits, right? Like the first thing you'll notice is he does dress kind of like these British Indian mystics that were popular in the 18th century. You know, this is kind of similar in a lot of ways. You can see Elvis's outfit is definitely from some sort of an Eastern tradition. And there's a lot, I have some Romani friends who've suggested that Elvis was actually a gypsy and that there's some decent evidence that he was maybe part Jewish, but certainly had some gypsy blood and lived in an area. This is why he became famous, perhaps, was because he was working in the fairs and the farm carnivals and circus, essentially county fairs that the Romani in America were. That was a major position that they had, to do something in general was to have the entertainments. So there is a lot to be said about his interest in magic. In fact, they always talk about him dying on the toilet, but they don't really mention that the book that was in his hands when he died was on Kundalini magic, right? Like he was doing some sort of Kegel exercises to death, perhaps, right? So, and anyone who's talked to Elvis, all of his security guards who were not into the occult as much, most of them were like Christians. The Christians tended to still swear to God. They're like, yeah, Elvis had magic powers, like the king, they called him. And he would be asleep at the limousine. They'd be worried they can't get through the flooding storm. And he'd make them roll down the window and he'd part the clouds, right? These kinds of stories.
They did this with all of these people. They did it with Marilyn Monroe. Like if you look at what Peter Levinda has to say about Marilyn Monroe, he's like, Marilyn Monroe was worth like 10. Like he'll just like list these people that we relate to as so significant. He's like, dude, Marilyn Monroe if the chessboard that was going on at the time, like these aren't the people who we have a depiction of who they are. Like we relate to them as like the dancing bear, but they were so much more. And like Elvis is one of those examples. Like that whole thing, like he he was abstaining from sex, but it was like he had this whole like spiritual practice that he like, and we didn't see that because that wasn't how he's being represented to us. He was just that, you know, chocolate, peanut butter, banana milkshake guy. Like he was just like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, here's Miguel Connor.
Miguel Connor is from Aeon Bites, not
Yep,
for radio. I get it now. I know exactly what you're talking about because I saw his I saw a few of his interviews. One of the ones that sticks out is with Jason Giorgiani, right? He did some pretty interesting stuff, and I know he's very well read. I would highly recommend if anyone doesn't watch him to go check out his Aeon Bites stuff. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. Thank you for bringing it up.
Dude, I'll hook you guys up. Miguel Connor is the best, dude. Fucking really, really brilliant, dude. Yeah, we've had him on the show as well, actually, to talk about the Elvis. But like he's stellar, dude. And yeah, absolutely, dude. There's so much into Elvis, like exactly what you're saying, David. Like he was really influenced by Madame Blavatsky and Manly P. Hall. Like he was a really interesting guy.
Yes. I know at least the Secret Teachings of All Ages was in his collection. And that's like, if you're going to be into Manly P. Hall, that's at least what you want. And at that point, though, I think a lot of that stuff wasn't really widely published or available even. Like a lot of the stuff came out after Elvis's death. Like I'm not even sure if like the Secret Destiny of America was even something that you could get at that time, you know, from the Philosophical Society. Like they published all of this stuff over time. But yeah. Very open-minded guy for sure.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
good sandwiches, dude. Honestly, the Elvis peanut butter sandwich it's amazing. It's fantastic. It will kill you.
What's the Elvis peanut butter sandwich?
They would hollow out an entire loaf of white bread. They would empty it out. I'm a former chef. In my past lives and for the like before I got into the aerospace stuff, I was a chef for 15 years. So they would hollow out a white loaf of bread. They would empty an entire jar of peanut butter, an entire jar of jelly, an entire pound of bacon, and then I think I've heard yes or no about the bananas, but then they would close this thing up, toast the whole thing, and you'd eat it. And it's the most amazing thing you'll ever put in your mouth. It will kill you. It's not good. But then I believe he was flying out twice a week to go and get one of these things, and he was finishing them in one sitting. This was his favorite sandwich, and that's why he got a little big in his later years.
Yeah. What do you?
Well, that's the Buddha, right? It's Siddhartha, and then you have like the laughing big Buddha. You know, that's the.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like an occult thing of possession? Like, the idea of using the human body. I always think of that movie, Casper the Friendly Ghost, where they can't really eat. And how much fun it would be to possess a human body to be able to eat if you couldn't. Do you think that there's something to that with Elvis?
Dude, I mean, I think that we are weird, unlimited beings that explore the universe for the most of the time, and then we get little glimpses here where it's just a little flash in the pan. You might as well enjoy absolutely everything you can while you're here. Go get one of those sandwiches right now.
This Gizzo theory of like his relationship to the Statue of Liberty. But the Statue of Liberty is clearly Elvis Presley. Look at that nose. Look at the face. It's almost identical. Coincidence? Yeah. No.
So, according to the wiki here, it says that Lord Maitreya, according to Theosophical doctrine, one of the hierarchies of the function is to oversee the evolution of humankind. Maitreya is said to hold the office of the world teacher, and sometimes manifesting or incarnating into physical realm, but not always. So, what do you think that this is? This idea that there's something that's trying to uplift humanity or to guide us with information.
What they tried to do is they tried to force this with Krishnamurti. And so Krishnamurti, they themselves, the Theosophical Society, had basically adopted him, for technically speaking, to be the world teacher. So they tried that and there's actually a theory that I kind of ascribe to, that this was done intentionally, knowing that to do this to somebody in this way as a child. So they were like grooming him to be the world teacher, right? When he was, I believe it was 13 years old. So he went by, I think it's Alcyon. Is that how you pronounce it? Or Alcyon? He was named after a star. So they gave him this attribution and kind of put everything on him as a child, that you are to be this thing. And, instead of him running with it, which he did initially, he wrote a book called At the Feet of the Master before he was even a teenager. And at one point, if I understand the story correctly, he went before a large crowd of people. And it was at this point where I believe it was the age of 13, he renounced the whole thing, just very like reactionary, and was like, there is no guru. you are the guru. Like there, so he went the rest of his life paradoxically becoming the very thing that they had prophesized him to be, and in rejection of the thing, because it's the nature of it is a paradox, right? So in his renunciation of this position, he ended up becoming the thing. And I find it really interesting, like when I think of like what was happening almost simultaneously with Aleister Crowley. So like Aleister Crowley was doing everything he could to make himself into this without anybody putting it on him that you're to be this thing. He was like, I want to be that. So you have this kind of like, they're almost like two pillars, right? You have the one person who's being forced upon, who's rejecting it, who's got so much you know, intention and everything of what he's doing with his life to basically be a moral, like ethical person in the truest sense.
Yeah, if he had tried to be the thing they asked him to be, he couldn't have become it. But in saying I won't do it, he accidentally became the thing that they wanted.
And so completely. Where I say like I kind of entertain this is like I'm like, was that from Helena Blavatsky? Was that intentional? Like, did they do that, set him up, knowing what the effect would be upon him to set him loose into the world? Yeah,
How
right.
British is like, that, right?
It's this classic reverse psychology, right? So like I don't know, that's what it looks like to me, but who knows?
What's up, Will? We just swapped Kurt for Will. Will, what do you think about Vedanta yoga in Portland? No, we can bring it up in a second because Nate had the link, but also Krishnamurti and Elvis and this idea of Lord Maitreya. Because for a second there, we were looking at this idea of the Maitreya, right? It's
which was the Messiah idea or something.
Yeah, so like there's in Buddhism, there's this idea of the future Buddha of the world is the Maitreya, right? And so this became in Theosophical society the idea of the Lord Maitreya, which is sort of the officer of the world teacher, the office of world teacher. And so this, I mean, we just were looking at the Bill Maher religious conversation because there's that weird scene where he interviews this cream guy about Lord Maitreya, right? And it was, where did that go? I just lost it. There it is. Maitreya the Christ speaks to Bill Maher. And it was just at the time, I mean, at the time, Bill Maher wasn't a dude who wore all black and seemed like a Saturn worshiper to me until this. This was when it was like, okay, you're going so hard in the paint against all of men's old religions. And you're suggesting that you have this new Saturnian, Neil deGrasse Tyson empirical religion based on material truths. How is that not theosophy? You know, like that's essentially the whole to me, it was interesting that Bill Maher was essentially becoming a new age spiritualist, a material spiritualist, and associating with the Maitreya.
Door, right? Like he wants to be an atheist and he ends up becoming his own, being representative of its own organized religion. That like through like it you know what I mean, like it has all the tropes of a religion. Like if you look at the ideology that attaches itself to like what he is in religious, like he's not Bill Hicks wearing all black. Like Bill Hicks, when he wore all black, his explanation was that he was going to be an embodiment of the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, where people around him are building tools, you know what I mean? But like for Bill Maher, it's like he's like, I'm anti-religion, but then he ends up becoming his own part of this other religion. So like, isn't that how repression and sublimation work? Is you push something down and then it finds another route to be the epitome of the thing under a different guise?
Comes in through the back door, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Backdoor man. Yep.
Oh man, there was the I just had the other link there. You know, Bill, you just brought up, what was it? Claude Noel or Summum Amun Ra, right? Summum Bonum Amun Ra, the creator of the Summum organization in Salt Lake City. Like the super Mormons, space Mormons, Egyptian, Rosicrucian Mormons. What was this about, Will? What were you bringing this up for?
I of course, you know where this came from when going through the Waco papers. There's a number of other concepts with people who say that they also had communications with gods, that the people are not spoken about. Like the key words to what he's talking about. You're going to run into people like Claude Noel here. And Claude Noel's wild because he was mummified. He thought he was going to come back from the dead too. But the idea that if you align, like in the Christian Bible, there talks about like the book of life, and if you don't find your name in the book, there is a translation about that basically, like Krishnamurti or whatever, however you say his name, like if you align to what the Messiah is in the written prophecies, then you basically become that, because it's not like you're necessarily like it's predicting you, but you're holding the words of who came before you. So it's like you're manifesting it. Like it was this real weird thing, because like with Waco, both the detractors from David Koresh and the people who are still for David Koresh are basically saying the exact same thing. Like the survivors that are still agreeing with him are saying, well, we manifested this. And then other people are saying, well, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, because your immediate question is like, well, how did he get the United States government to attack? You know, like if that fulfilled their prophecy, how is it his fault for them attacking? Do you get what I mean? But that's like what they were doing, was they were living in accordance to make the prophecy happen, which is just a mind fuck.
I mean, that is what manifestation is. Sorry, go ahead, sir. Andres.
No, I was gonna say, it's kind of like, just because I know like 6 things about this guy and not much more, that he was a Mormon even until his death, and his organization was one of the few organizations allowed to produce wine and liquor in Utah, because there's an exemption for religious purposes,
ritual services or something like that.
Right, ceremonial religious purposes. And so the fact that he wasn't creating exactly a religion, he said, it wasn't quite a religion in his opinion, it was a religious organization.
But he's talking to God. See, here's the thing. Like, you can fit all of these guys, whether their philosophies agree or not, there's common symptoms between, I mean, that's what we study. When I go and I like try to intervene with Waco, I'm not trying to go up to a Wacoian and be like, yo, I'm a sync researcher, dog, because they're not going to listen to anything I say. I have to present myself as a researcher for religious and ecstatic experiences, because that's what synchronicity is. Synchronicity is considered to be an ecstatic. So I can fly up underneath that radar, and I have I have over a decade of research. So like I can get away with saying that. But the point is all of these guys are starting to kind of have the same symptoms. And that's where I'm getting at. That's what I think, that's what my main thesis is sometimes these people know about each other, sometimes they don't. The ones that, like, that's what he says is, how many messiahs is it going to take? Is something that David Koresh said to the FBI negotiators. And he was like, he says, it says right here in the Bible, as many as it takes. How many messiahs are there? And then he goes, as many as it takes. Like this whole idea that there's a whole bunch of people who are experiencing these bicameral mind experiences. And that might be, I mean, I'm here because of sync. Like, this has something, synchronicity has something to do with consciousness, and bicameral mind has something to do with how we relate to the natural world. There's some sort of echo or byproduct that we call sync from that experience.
You're touching on the crux, right? Because I mean, isn't this like what is the signifier according to what is the basis of Christianity? If you're going to make the Judeo-Christian argument, what is the characteristic trait in the world of form to show that the Mashiach has come and that this prophecy has been fulfilled? The end of all debt and the release of all slaves. No slavery, no debt. And so this is the reason why, when it comes to people who, Jewish people or people who are steeped in even occultism or mysticism, and they're getting at the roots of like, what do we expect to see manifest in the world that will signify that this thing has happened? But the discrepancy among Christians is that they believe that there's kind of this like alternate, like the world that is to come is ultimately here already in the midst. And so that's a spiritual dimension. Well, so they're like, he came, we just have to believe it to see it. And this is where belief comes in, which gets really tricky, because then you have to get into, well, what is the fall in the first place? But our belief, right? So it's knowledge.
Easter was the first time I had been to church in quite a few years, probably since my wife's mother died, outside of like a funeral or something like that. But we were going to church quite often then. Anyways, I realized that there was the main crux of what the sermon was one of the passages that David Koresh used. It was from 1 Corinthians 15, I think, which if you read that, the whole thing is about Judgment Day. And it talks about, like, not only the first part of it is Jesus came alive. It's like this whole logical thing of a man coming back from life. Therefore, we're all going to. And
Right.
it's
This is all of our destiny, no matter what. Yeah.
Right. Which is
because it's in the nature of what's possible and
bypassed it. Yeah. They totally bypassed it. And see, there's that Cepheus right there. There's a relationship to King Cephas and Cepheus. And Cephas means little stone. Anyways, like they're talking about, you know, on the day of judgment, not everybody will be dead, but all will be changed. And it's literally about the resurrection of the dead. But my point is, out of like that, like this is what David Koresh had a problem with. He was like, the pastors these days talk in verses. They don't talk in chapters. And that's exactly what this church did when I went there at Easter. They touched upon the stuff that was, this is how we know Jesus is alive. But then they totally bypassed the reason why that chapter existed, which was to tell everybody that everybody's going to like live after death.
That's right. And
it's because they don't know what to do with it.
You're saying the stone, like that's really interesting. It also, this is so trippy. It actually relates to the worm in Dune. So like where the worm comes from is because, so there's the passage where Israel, this is symbolism too. We're not just talking about the physical place, like it's symbolic. So you say this Israel's referred to as a worm, Yaakov is referred to as a worm. And the idea is that you have something so small that's going to be so vast. So everyone will get to experience the thing that this small fraction at one time got to experience, which is but people might not like this, but it's the same premise as Christianity. What you were saying before about what Jesus experiences, if this is within the realm of possibility for the organism itself, then it's inevitable. It's the destiny of humanity that we will become this thing. So like that idea is an ancient idea. Like
what's written happened
on that whole thing.
We know this though because through Jeffrey Kripal, when you and I were doing Sync Book Radio and stuff, and we were way into discovering all of these individuals who basically wrote themselves into their own stories. But if you think that this is a way that language works, then all of these people are like, but everything has to make sense. So if we're in one long narrative, what happens at the beginning can't be useless for the end. Then it's not a good narrative. So there's a lot of things that they said that are relevant to us now that because of technology, we've kind of like thought weren't relevant anymore. But what's happening is all of this stuff is piled up and being fed into AI. And now we have like this new renaissance where you can have something assist you going through things that normally you would have had to have been a monk for 20 years to have read.
Right, but the point is that it's still the replicant. That's still not the stone that the builders rejected, but the one that stands in its place in the interim of the fall, right? So because it's a substitute reality. So like it can approach.
Well, this is what I was going to say. You made the comment about the worm, how because there's I think it's called typographical, because you can mix it up with the word for a topography, but there's another term in religion where events like mimic and go over and over. So the stone, for instance, is repeated, or the rock. There's a sure rock, a sure foundation. There's the stone, but there's an interpretation that that's basically just the symbolism for saying that God is real. If God is the rock, he's as real as a rock.
It's an archway. It's very specific allegory. So you're having an archway with a center stone that's taking on the weight of the rest of the stones. And so the idea is that in this interim, we have some other stone in the place of what should be at the center of it all. In traditional Kabbalah, that's the feminine aspect of God. So the Shekhinah, the daughter of God, is pushed to the base of the structure, and in that place is what Christians would call the horror of Babylon, right? So, and for in traditional Jewish mysticism, that's Lilith. Same thing, but it's the beast. So she rides atop the beast, right? So like it's all about sacrifice. So because everything gets sacrificed for the kingdom to exist as it does. So you have this like alternate power structure instead of the power structure that exists inherently, the natural order in nature. So we have this unnatural replicant in its place. And so the idea is that as the closer that it gets to approximating the thing that it's representing, the more the thing actually ultimately breaks down. So like it appears to be stronger and stronger, but as it gets stronger, because it gets more defined, it's actually fracturing apart. And so like that's the meaning of the revelation, is when the thing actually the more real that it appears, the more fragile it becomes. It's like it's always darkest before the dawn, you know? So this is a central Kabbalistic idea in the Zohar, is that this is, if you want to know the timeline in which, as we move towards a one world government, the closer that we get to it appearing all powerful, the closer that it is to the whole thing collapsing. So it has like a pressure valve or something. It's like we get closer and closer to it and we think, oh, this is the end. But
because the main proponent out of most of the Bible is like, there's this big argument on whether or not the earth was destroyed before Adam and Eve. Mm-hmm. And the whole crux of that argument is based on him saying the exact same words to Noah that he said to Adam, which was go and replenish the population. Sure. So the whole point of the Bible is to have kids. In fact, there's some parts of the Nag Hammadi where the disciples are asking Jesus, what are we doing this for? And they basically give him this vision of all of these little kids coming in and like putting their hands up to him. And he's like, who are these children? He's like, these are all the kids who come later. Like right. you guys are having to live a monastic life. So you set an example for people that come in the future, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have just like a ton of kids. But what happens when you industrialize? When you industrialize or you go and move to a city, birth rates go down. And then once birth rates go down, populations crash, and then you can no longer repopulate. So there's a whole big thing. Like if we were fully advanced, if we were like had beaten death and were space traveling, we wouldn't be having kids. I mean, let's just fucking face it. And like the only reason we have kids is because of death. So there's this weird catch-22 where, and it even says it in some will call me the God of death, but I am the God of life or whatever, because there's probably like, I am a firm believer. I was
like, all right, I do eat kids, but I made those kids. Yeah.
And that's the whole point, where the whole main Islam or the whole Israeli move away from committing child sacrifice is why God says, I am one God. There is no other God than me. And then that's why they had to make the freaking grade school-esque commandments of like, every kid knows you should not kill.
From Kant's philosophy of like the thing in itself, right? Like when you're like the thing in itself, like it's also that idea of like who watches the watchman, like the observer is the observed, like who's actually like it's in Sanskrit you say paragot, right? It's beyond. If you are the thing in itself, ultimately, like you can't turn around and look at yourself. That's why when Moses goes to look at the face of God, all he can see is God's back parts, because I am that I am.
That's supposed to be the Shekinah too. The translation through the Seventh-day Adventists is that's the female version of God's backside.
Right. Well,
it's the
dwelling, literally.
If you ever don't want to celebrate Mother's Day,
it's a key term for wisdom, like an idea that there is it's called the secret place on the stairs, and this goes back to another person that David Koresh, which is Walter Russell, because he associates the secret place on the stairs as with the Secrets of Light, and the Secrets of Light was written by a guy by the name of Walter Russell that's been very popularized recently by Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan show. The most of the ideas that he's talking about come from Walter Russell, who again said that he was having communications with God.
Totally.
I just want to say really quickly that if you ever want to not celebrate Mother's Day, it's also Visakha Buddha Day. It's the Buddha's birthday. So you can always just celebrate yourself as the Buddha. But also, I had a couple of thoughts. One I wanted to bring up was just like the Timothy Chalamet sinks. I've been watching a lot of Simpsons recently, and he's in like the Wacky Races remake, like the reboot. He's supposed to be like the dog character, but he's also recently in A Complete Unknown, right? He's in the Dune movie. You brought up Dune, and that made me think about it.
Bob Dylan is the 42 signifier. Bob Dylan.
Sure.
He's playing this Messiah character over and over. He's even Willy Wonka that has some weird connotations to it. I haven't even watched that. I just know that it's probably thick as hell.
Bob Dylan's totally known as the dude who sold his soul for immortality. He is cursed to not die. You know, he's friends with all the people that sold their soul. The Bite of the Apple, he was available with the Apple iPod devices, you know, friends with Steve Jobs. And his association with like Labor Party, that whole thing is kind of interesting too.
But he left that ambiguous because he could have just as easily been talking about God. So like when he's like, I made a deal with the man on the other side, and they're like, you mean God? But he didn't actually specify, right? So
Bob Dylan's got whole friggin' Bob Dylan's got whole Christian albums, dude. Like,
well, yeah, he had that motorcycle accident too, and he went full on into like was it Slow Train Company?
God went to Abraham and said, "Kill me a son." Abraham said, "God, you must be putting me on."
He has songs where the melodies are from like the 13th century in Scotland. Like he's like medieval music. That other things that kind of associate with the devil. You know, like just being that good at music is like a devilish thing. But I hear you that it's not necessarily God or the devil. It could be just the man on the other side, like the guy, the boss.
There's his classic. All the times that he talked about the Antichrist on the stage. And the way he tells the story from Revelation of like, you know, people are saying he's going to bring peace to the world, you know, and he's like, he says, you know, I don't know what you got to hold on to, but I got a solid rock to hold on to. And then he comes in with his jam. But yeah, no, he's definitely, I definitely caught the symbolism of Chalamet portraying Bob Dylan. And by the way, like, you know, it's ridiculous to make a Hollywood film about Bob Dylan at all, like, because it just is so the antithetical to Bob Dylan's whole trip, you know. But at the same time,
the most mainstream movie.
If they would have done a lip syncing thing with it, people would have insulted it, you know, just the same. Like there was no way that they could have done that and had it be ultimately acceptable. So, given what circumstances were, and the person who portrayed Joan Baez too, I think they did as good of a job as they could have done for doing a Hollywood movie about Bob Dylan. You know,
I was talking to Andros Jones about that movie. He made a good point. They have the entire set list, like the set list that basically is supposed like that changed the world, right? Like they play it from start to beginning, and they show you what's going on behind stage and everything. But that's like they played that entire concert.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you're talking about the folk festival at the end? Is that what you're referring to?
What's that? Yeah, the one where he goes electric, and they're trying to Bob plays the whole set list, but the whole they capture that on film. They go from song one. They don't show you what happened at the concert, or show you they almost show you real time the concert. So there's this weird kind of Tarantino-esque or De Palma-esque way that they filmed it. I'm not even sure who filmed it or not, but I did watch it, and you got to pay attention. There's a lot of weird syncy stuff going on in the dialogue, like certain things that they say feel like it has trigger words in it and stuff. Yeah. But of course, the connotation you were talking about earlier with in the Bible, they call it the War of the Snakes, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts right at the bat with Adam and Eve. God, the snake gets basically the blame and says Eve and it are always going to be at war. And then there's the snakes that eat the Egyptian snakes during Moses. Then there's Moses with the brazen snake. Then there's Jesus being the snake. And there's a lot of different names for that personification as Christ as a snake, including the fiery serpent. It's but once you know the symbolism of he's the snake, then you can see where it pops up, even though it's up underneath a different skies, or so to speak.
Well,
but I think that was directly lifted for Dune, because the worms and the snakes, and then Paul Mahdi basically becomes the worm.
Yes. The worm is the spice. The spice is the worm. Yeah, it's very,
See,
very.
there's like this whole scene in this. There's a couple of different snake scenes where the snakes run off.
Numbers 21 is what we were looking.
I want to
at.
use this as a chance also because Nate's been super patient. God, I don't know how you do it. You're such a good man,
Thank you.
Nate. But you had sent that link earlier when we were talking about Maitreya, and I feel like we worked our way back to it by talking about the seraph, Christ as the seraphim, and this idea. Because Vedanta, right? What did you want to bring up this Vedanta society for?
Oh, dude, I just discovered these guys like about a month ago. They're really cool. I've called them, talked to them. They have about 250 acres out here. Like I'm in the middle of butt shit nowhere up in Northwest Oregon, and these guys own a bunch of acres out here, and they have this giant forest with all these awesome shrines, and you can go and visit them. They're super, super cool, dude. They have ones dedicated to Christ and all the different like wild, fun, different things. Like, dude, it's an endless journey that you can go on this property.
Yeah, I did an 11-day Vedanta retreat one time, and it was completely silent, and you don't eat anything except for I think you got like a banana or something like that once a day. It was like super small amount of food, and you just it's like a silent meditation for like 11 days, super intense.
You're not talking about Vipassana, are you?
No, Vipassana is a practice, right? Where you do it's a silent Vipassana retreat.
Yeah, I did like a 10-day Vipassana retreat one time where you meditate for 10 hours for a day for 10 days. And describing what you're describing, it feels very Vedantist, like what they're communicating. But I don't know if they would technically say that
So Vedanta, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Vedanta just means like summary or yes, like the realization or conclusions of the Veda.
It's a later philosophy than Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, but they're actually there's an argument that they're two sides of the same thing. So there's been a lot written on that where you can kind of fuse the two philosophies together because they're using terminology they're recognizing different aspects of something that people want to treat it that they're contrary, but they're actually part of a continuum. So in other words, Patanjali would have Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter, right? The upward triangle and the downward triangle, that they'd communicate that. That's a traditional, that's where the term yoga comes from, as far as the earliest example of I believe. Noel might say something, correct me in some kind of way, but this is my understanding of having studied under Baba Hari Das. But then you have, in Vedanta, you have Maya and Brahm, right? So people would say, oh, this is the same thing or whatever. It's not. This isn't Hero with a Thousand Faces. These are two different communications.
Yeah,
so
Vedanta is more like conclusions, and Vipassana is like seeing things as they really are, right? It's
so Brahm is the absolute, Maya is illusion, right? But in Patanjali's philosophy, these are both realities. Nature and spirit are both reality, whereas Maya is an illusion. Like nature as Prakriti isn't necessarily an illusion. It's just another aspect of this larger entity or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. My mom did a silent retreat instead of sending me
that explains a lot about owning DeWibs. I get that. I don't know. I think I like the Vedanta people.
What can we talk?
What about a couple random astrological things is that the auroras around Jupiter are super hyphy. I don't know if that's a scientific term, hyphy, but it seems like they're getting pretty hyphy right now. You get these coronal projections that they're capturing. I like it better when we get actual pictures like this instead of the ones that are that look like the way Jupiter looks in your Scholastic magazine. I like the real ones that look all glass and nice. But there was this whole other thing, which is simultaneously they're saying that the next 50 years could be extreme for Northern Lights, right? Northern Lights are ramping up all the time. And what do you think about this idea, higher energy for the next 50 years that we're seeing, rainbow lights in the sky? Because it'll be hard to explain to kids who live through that the sky used to be dark.
Right.
And then vice versa. How do you explain to your parents that they were living in the dark compared to the regular world, right? If the sky is back to the way, and this is the way it's described. I mean, I remember in the Sandman comic, they talk about the ancient world. It used to be that the sky was super colorful and bright up until the invention of blue, which gets us back to theosophy with what's the book, The Bluebird, right? Like Madame Blavatsky talking about the invention of blue, and that before the color blue, we actually saw far more, and that blue kind of just blinds us to the colors of the sky and the sea. We have this big blue sensor bar that used to be, brilliant colors that we just can't perceive anymore because they're blacked out. But I don't know. Just what did you want to?
Well, there's also the idea there is that there's kind of like this, like the way that the cleat boat work is kind of like they would relate it to like a funnel that's been tightened and tightened and tightened, and because like this is all we know, we have no other basis for comparison but our perceptual world as that we exist. Like that's communicative of the fall. That in other words, like what we existed within, we can't see that. Like we can't know like what our ancestors actually experience, like perceptually, like what did the world look like to them, like, and there's something to say, like when you have like anything that's outside of our emanated flow of our essence that like shrouds our perceptual lens, so that we wouldn't know. It's like dumb people don't know that they're dumb, you know what I mean? Like that's like,
you guys ever heard that purple doesn't exist? You guys know about the idea that there's no natural born, there's no purple photon or anything like that. So the whole idea is that in actuality, our brain can't process that part of the spectrum. So it just reads it as not green. And that purple as a color is really just like
ultraviolet,
a program error. Like
so infrared and then ultraviolet. So these are like the limits of our perception. Yeah.
You see Trump in Saudi Arabia. I know it happened for Biden too, but they rolled out the purple carpet. The last time he was there, it was red. And so there's this argument because you have the two pillars, the red and the blue, and then the middle pillar associated with purple and Sirius or whatever. It's the merging of Yakin and Boaz. So there's like, it's a symbol for royalty, right? Like that is I think
maybe it's a symbol for royalty because of that. I think that maybe it has to do with being
the crown, right?
Beyond the spectrum of an average, like, I mean, that's why that color is also, as far as the chakras go, like almost unattainable, like above the head, so to speak. Like it's a sign of like superiority or being of higher ground or something. But it also takes, it's harder to make purple. Like you would have to, it's a little bit more of an expensive process to make purple, and therefore individuals had to be rich to wear it.
Right, but the Ein Sof is beyond Keter, right? So the idea is as far as like it's even beyond the physical realm as we know it with the lower worlds, but there's even beyond that. So you have like the God and then the Godhead, right? So it's like but yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's the Most High as far as knowledge can go, or even
you remember the boy who was working for Doge, and they were looking at what did he do before he worked at Doge, and he won the award for using AI to read the charcoal ruins of the Vesuvius scroll, right? It was just this burnt up circle, but they were able to pull out the first word that they pulled out was purple. That's something that, it's an ancient thing that we're wrestling with. And it's something that's interesting that we see, or we can describe purple further back in history than we can blue. So that's interesting also, just that we have infrared, ultraviolet, but then blue, if you look at the color spectrum, you can see that the colors themselves are very narrow in certain fields. So the amount of blue to green here is actually a larger, and in red you can see how much red look how little ultraviolet is, and then into regular blue, it's a huge chunk of the wheel. So it seems like you should get much more difference between yellow to blue and the green, and a bigger difference between ultraviolet purple into orange. But there's just certain spectrums that we're unable to interpret, and that does feel like we're being hidden from some reality.
This is a kind of a roadblock when you're having philosophical conversations, especially about interpretations of holy books or of movies or of Synctank in general. Is this whole idea? Well, how do I know that your blue is my blue? And I kind of want to know what you guys feel about it, because I'm
a big math guy. I like nanotechnology. I just feel like
I think I read a study a while back on like using colors for advertisement, and they actually studied some people who were like colorblind who still preferred red as far as a product's concerned. And so I feel like there's an effect on the body or the senses due to wavelength. So when I don't argue blue is blue, green is green, yellow's yellow, especially as far as it has to do with like symbolism and stuff. I think that like you could probably go different ways. If somebody had some negative experience with yellow when they were a kid, like their mom always made them wear yellow or something like that. And I understand too that certain people have medical conditions where they see like letters as colors and those things. But as far as like arguments go, it's best not to go into that territory of what it means, especially with symbolism.
Do you know that story? I think we talked about it before, but the yellow wallpaper story that was an inspiration for how they filmed parts of Rosemary's Baby, where somebody was it's kind of like gaslight. They're being like manipulated and they're obsessing on the yellow wallpaper. That's a trippy story, but yeah, it's like there's certain scenes in Rosemary's Baby where they'll pan up at the yellow wallpaper, and apparently it's a reference to this association of yellow with, I believe, manipulation. So she's being manipulated, and that's a clue. Very weird. I think it's called the yellow wallpaper.
First thing when you were talking about the history of blue was Project Bluebird, which I wonder if those are related. But I mean, making somebody disassociate or maybe perhaps like split somebody's personality into thinking they see two different blues.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the yellow wallpaper. Ordinary people like John and myself. Yeah, security. Yeah, it's weird. Is this it? Is this? Yeah, this looks like an excerpt from it or something. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so 1890, Charlotte Perkins, right?
Yeah. But no, what you were just saying. Yeah, no, the bluebird. It's another story. Is the children's bluebird from Russia, which was in all likelihood the inspiration for
Wizard of Oz.
For the Wizard of Oz as well. Yeah. But I was going to say MK Ultra before it was MK Ultra, or what became MK Ultra.
The bluebird flies all over the place. The bluebird flies through Back to the Future. The bluebird flies through K-Pax.
Oh, right. The bluebird hysteria in K-Pax. Yeah.
Well, see, here's the thing with K-Pax. It's like
Long of the South, Mr. Bluebird. Why are you so blue?
Right. He is this alien who travels through light. So the importance of the spectrum is implied there. Plus, there's a whole lot of connotations, like with Men in Black, both the version that shows up in Mothman Prophecy and the comic book TV representation. They use the flash bulb to rewrite people's memory. But this is like common culture for any assassin. Like they just played it out brilliantly with the new Captain America movie. As shitty as you might think it, that's what they do. Is that people look down at their phone and they get the flashes and they become assassins.
Right.
Which is like so. And
which is why you shouldn't have a phone.
Spacey carries this over because Men Who Stare with Goats are using lights to program people with like. So Spacey holds a huge MK Ultra baggage in his stuff.
Totally. Yeah. House of Cards too. I mean, I know we're getting close to the end here, so I just wanted to quickly also go over this because Nate does, have a shared interest that I have in Bigfoot, and I think you also are kind of interested in UFOs, right? To an extent, right? So I started noticing this and hearing people say this, that they're connected. You think of Bigfoot as, and we said this on your show. And by the way, if you haven't, everyone watched the recent Reality Czars that I did with Nate and with Paranoid American Thomas, go watch that. But we talked a bit about this idea that state parks might be this out of time fairy treaty place where people in the future, when the singularity is reached, they have sort of out of bounds inner zones in these state parks that they can be going back to the Jurassic, right? And they can exist outside, which is why some people go missing.
21 was really about? Is that what they're trying to do?
It could literally be about that, preparing for the singularity. And one of these articles, this was Pennsylvania. I wish that Kurt was still here because he's from Pennsylvania, but was Pennsylvania ground zero for a joint UFO Bigfoot invasion. And let me block my script there. cryptids, paranormal activities between 1973 and 74. Paranormal researcher Stan Gordon documented claims of connections between Bigfoot and UFOs in his Secret Invasion Pennsylvania UFO Bigfoot casebook. I wonder what you think about this.
Everybody was friggin' talking to UFOs in the 70s.
Yeah. The Kecksburg, right? This is the black bell, but the golden Winnie the Pooh honeypot version, and it's Keck, right? Like Pepe the frog. Keck. This idea of this black bell thing in Pennsylvania discovered with all these weird pseudo, I want to almost call them Mormon, Reformed Egyptian looking symbols. Do you have, okay, sorry, but it seems like you have
related to the honorary like title that Elon Musk has with that UFO cult. What's it called? Can't think right now. The Raelianism.
Yeah, Raelianism. I don't know if it's exactly related, but in a sense,
I feel like I've seen this image that you just showed in relationship to Raelism. Isn't this part of their thing? I thought this was directly connected. No, I'm pretty sure.
I haven't heard of their connection to the Kecksburg bell, but I wouldn't be too surprised. I mean, again, the Kecksburg bell is really common symbolism because you have the Thule Society, the Reich was making a black bell, right? Der Glocken, right, was their magic bell. But I know that's another association, I guess, is through the Reich to the Raelians, but I don't know exactly that one about the connection between the Raelians. Maybe it's possible that they brought it up. The thing is, they definitely believe in aliens, right? And they believe in out of time.
The world's biggest UFO cult. Yeah. And yes, Elon Musk is an honorary member. And you can find Mr. Rail himself, the founder of the organization. You can find a letter from him regarding what Elon Musk represents for them and their community. So like, there's a whole connection there because there's a whole set of ethics that they ascribe to that he is supposed to be a representative of in the world, like as it relates to certain freedoms. So
you guys were just showing the Hindi type yogi guys. Do you still have that tab open?
The
Vedanta guys. Yeah.
Let me find that. Vedanta Society of Portland, right? Which
right.
has
Right there, it says Mount Hood, Oregon, right? Mm-hmm. That place is crawling with all of those like weird vortex UFO lore.
Yes, everybody go check out my first documentary that we made, The Search for Psychic Sasquatch. We went to Mount Hood looking for him. So
oh really? Have you ever talked to Lauren Coleman?
I don't know if I've ever listened to
Lauren Coleman I think he's considered the world's leading authority on Bigfoot. He's an older guy. He's been involved in the Sync community for years, and
he's probably a leading
more books on Sasquatch than anyone.
Okay, so Coleman actually was going around the United States in the 80s looking at all of these places in the United States where they have like weird soft spots or vortexes, or there'll be cryptids, there'll be UFOs, there'll be Bigfoots, sometimes there'll be ogres, there'll be pterodactyl sightings, weird lights in the skies. But he and John Keel, the individual who wrote Mothman Prophecy, had this conversation going that most of the places where they discovered large, like concentrated reports that range the spectrum are in individual places called devil, or the word devil in a different language. And it was funny because recently, within the last couple of years, I was driving through a part of Arkansas that I'd never been, and we drove through Devil's Den. And I looked up Devil's Den, and it has the whole gambit. It has cryptids, it has humongous, impactful UFO lore. It has weird murders, a vortex area. And there's another guy who's named Perslinger, we've talked about before, who wrote a book in the 80s who determined that most of these places happen in like areas that have weird geographical plate movement. You know, like there's plates moving together, which rubs metals together in mountainous areas and stuff like that, that create magnetic fields. And then all of that stuff either opens up people's brains or opens up fabric of time, space,
or
and
straight up opens up the Mount Hood, right? That's the idea, is like where Bigfoot's at, there are UFOs that fly in. And the same thing with Pennsylvania, where UFOs fly in, there are Bigfoots in the wood. Why is there a connection between these space-time, perhaps aliens? Maybe they're just us in the future. And then these Bigfoot.
That's why. Yeah.
Oh shit! Is that what it is? It has to do with like evolution in both directions or something?
Yeah,
that was very 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? Where you have like, you know, the ancient man and then the Star Child. Yeah, no, tripping.
I think so. That's it. It's very
there's a Christian evolutionist who has this whole idea that there's certain spots where animals that have been extinct for millions of years pop back into the fossil record, and it happens often, almost like they're spawn points or whatever. Like, so the animals might be extinct, but then some portal opens up and one from a couple of centuries ago walks back into modern times.
Crazy.
That happens all the time. There's a ton of stuff that's been discovered recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to look into the Mount Hood thing more. We're going to have to do another talk on this. Nate, I'm going to definitely want to check out more of your stuff, and everyone should be looking at the search for Psychic Bigfoot. I want to also recommend you check out Reality Czars podcast, which is, you know, where Nate's joining. Thanks again, Nate, for joining us.
Absolutely.
You guys pop into Instagram to follow him. He's also got a Rumble page. You guys still have a YouTube, right? Like, or is that happening?
We are going to be making a YouTube. We got kicked off, but our
but you guys have
Anomaly Hunters, which is on so that's our paranormal group, and we're actually going to be hanging out in McMinnville this upcoming weekend, Saturday, for UFO days. Actually, out there, it's a big festival. It's a lot of fun. I'll probably be dressed up like an alien. We're gonna have a good time. So my paranormal team will be out there. If anybody happens to be in the Pacific Northwest and wants to hang out,
you should like call ICE and say there's a bunch of aliens at this festival and see what happens. Okay,
yeah, don't pick me up, dude. I'm a little too dark toned.
I know that.
It looks like a really good guess. Like, I want to scroll through looking at some of your stuff there. That's like Nate.
They have really great guests.
Like, I just when you're flipping through there, I'm like, ooh, that looks good. That looks good.
I'm almost
even your main
jealous of the amount of cool guests, quantity and quality. Just amazing stuff. I've luckily talked to a few of these people. There's some amazing people associated through the Alt Media United, right? Which is we're technically an ally of Alt Media United, which is, you know, one of our favorite things.
Question though, I've never listened to a podcast on this is Instagram. Like, you can do that? I like Instagram. I always thought was like such a limited thing. Like, it give you so long. Like, but you have full on podcasts on Instagram.
No, this is just our page. But yeah, you can find us Apple, all that stuff, and Rumble, things like that.
I see. So your Instagram is pointing at directing people to other places. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, are you able to use Instagram in a way I didn't know? Okay, gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, but they've got a Telegram group too,
by the way, though, as a launch pad to other places. Yeah.
Totally. We need to be doing that more. And I think, we should make it a Synctank page for Instagram just for that purpose.
Media Monarchy. There's no
shout out. Yeah, we had James and Pilato on. That was one of my that's the best get I've ever gotten. I've talked to a lot of people, but James and Pilato is my favorite of all time.
Dude, that's interesting. Yeah, well, and everybody check out
Think Summit one time.
I feel like Odyssey's great because there's no commercials, so that's another reason to check out that. But yeah, he has a lot of good stuff. Nate, honestly, no joke, no clout, no glazing here. You have some really great shows, and so just because people seem to be telling me they like my show, I feel like I have to introduce you to my friend's shows, and you know, he's 100% in right now, so you better go check that out. Go to Reality Czars pod. You know?
Will was he the guy who we had on who went off about the Simpsons? Was that?
Yeah. He did the whole breakdown between the Simpsons game where you had to like infiltrate
the stonecutter thing and the levels of it. Yeah, that was fun. He's cool. Yeah, we had fun with that guy.
Dude, let me also say, check out David Plate. He's at MK Ultrasound. This is his X page right here. You can go to the sync book link right here. It'll take you right to his art, his music, video, research, and as well as paintings. This is Julia. The Haunting of Julia, sync with John Lennon's album Double Fantasy, Milk and Honey. I'm sure you've sent this already to Sean Lennon. He's
Yeah,
famous.
I get responses from him on things sometimes, even with the sync videos. But this particular one, he hasn't commented on. But
He
yeah,
gets pissed
it
off
feels
when
like,
anyone brings up his parents. He's like, you know what I mean? I not really. I'm kind of kidding, but like I remember he was talking about how kids need to be good.
he
Go
doesn't.
ahead.
I can totally appreciate like his position on it because he's articulated what his beef is. So he doesn't want to like go there with like speculating from the more mystical place on his father. But then as an artist himself, he will totally go there. Like he made a music video one time with, I think it was with the Claypool
Primus.
Lennon,
Yeah.
yeah, and like you can see that he took from Lucifer Rising, and you're like,
Yeah.
dude, that is so loaded and esoteric and stuff. So, but he has that creative license to do that, and I don't think he has a problem with some people just kind of how weird people can get about like when you start like, you know, I mean, sync doesn't kill people, people kill people, but I can appreciate how sensitive he could be around that. It's his fucking dad, dude. So
Right.
yeah, but yeah, anyway, but it's deep. And so yeah, on that website I have like over 200 videos for free streaming and download. If you go to my highlights on my Twitter, I have some that are on here, on the website, and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, if you're into like dark side of the rainbow type of stuff, I got a lot of that. It's
Schindler's List with Leonard
over
Cohen.
25 years of research, all available to people to check out. So
Yep. Super bass. And then of course also Meta Egg has, you know, this is Will's channel. He's popping off recently, the Philip K. Dick thing, and this is Vegas Spheres Artificial Contact. What was the latest one? No, you have
that was the latest
work,
video.
bro.
That was like the last video that I did. I did that one with Goro Adachi. That was a total script by Goro Adachi. He's asked to do another long form video, but I don't have editing capabilities, so I've just been interviewing people about Waco.
Yeah,
and,
Catherine
about Philip K. Dick recently.
This is a good one too. I would, if you're interested in Waco and, you know, kind of the other side of things a bit, because if there's anyone I think knows about Waco at all, it's Will, and Will seems to know a lot about Waco. But you seem to talk to all the people who know the most, so definitely, you know, they sold us volatile.
It's a weird community that's still got a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of like hurt, and a lot of people don't necessarily believe in David, so it's like you have to kind of walk through these laser beams, but there's a huge amount of misconceptions that Catherine here has been helping me to sort through and whatnot.
Well, I would love to talk to you about Waco. Actually, we should hook up after that.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah,
do a podcast.
That would be awesome. I would love to see that. Let's put together a Reality Czars Meta Egg collaboration on Waco. And then yeah, if you guys like this stuff, you might be already hearing this right now from a clip. You never know. But Exertus Amoeba, that's the Clips channel. Jose's doing an amazing job. You can already see there's like 10-minute, 5-minute, 11-minute, different length, short little bits here. Some of the best ones. Here's Alex Stein and me talking about internet ghettos, political correctness, safe spaces. And Tracy Twyman, there's actually 2 solid clips, Big Pharma, Time Warp, Funny or Die, remembering Tracy Twyman and Genuflect. Yeah, we had a great conversation last week about Tracy, and then we ended up getting Jose put this clip out, and it's like, if you want to just tell someone about it, I would say send them the 13-minute video because it's a short, quick way to get introduced. I heard a lot of people say they liked that one a lot and a lot of people who never heard of Tracy before. People now are really interested in Tracy, got genuflect and are reading about it, and they said this was a great way that we stayed on a subject they could follow the whole time, and then things they didn't know about and they learned. So
have you thought about reaching out to what's his face, the guy who made Room 237, David?
Rob Asher.
Because I mean, his set of work, I know he just came out with a new movie. He might not want to talk to us, but you have Room 237, you have The Nightmare, and you have like The Glitch in the Matrix, which are all like related to the stuff.
Yeah. Also not just him, but the people who were on Room 237, if they're interested, we could talk to
Twyman was. I'm pretty sure Twyman was on The Nightmare. I'm pretty sure Twyman was on The Nightmare.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, can I add one little plug here? Is that Chris McQuinn here in the comments says art for sale. he bought some art from me. He lives in Saratoga. He came out here, and he's really happy with 3 pieces. So eventually, really soon here, me and Thomas are gonna be releasing our comic book. Hopefully within like 2 months, we'll start the launch or something. And so like for the Kubrick Golden Bough comic, and when that happens, I'm gonna be including like a bunch of prints for sale along with it. But if ahead of time, if somebody wants to drop me a message, if they're interested in my collage art, I do G-Clay prints. They're large poster size prints. I did a special thing for him where I used a heat press and like laminate gloss, the class laminate that like helps the colors pop and stuff, which is a little bit more high end. But I could also just send out for less money. I could send out just like a tube of a poster if you're interested. We can discuss prices or not. That eventually on Thomas's website. That'll be more like official. Oh, cool, you got one. Is that signed by who?
That's signed by Rose McGowan.
Rose McGowan signed my artwork with your thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I made a
Yeah,
sync video. I used your artwork and passed out about fucking 300 of these flyers.
Yeah.
So but I got
if you went to
Jones's assistant.
If you go to MK Ultrasound, you go from his link to the sync book where all the videos are. Then right in the description here, you'll find David's art. It's on the second paragraph. You click on art, and art will take you to where you can actually see his art, and you can call, text, email, and you can actually get a stretched canvas, nice piece. I have a nice piece.
So
I really recommend it.
I just found out that for the longest time, the link hasn't been working very well at all, and people have actually been trying to buy art from my boss's website, and it hasn't been going through. So if you contact me directly, we can work it out, which is like what I just did with Chris, and he's happy with it, you know. And actually, Brittany as well. I sent her a piece in Massachusetts. So
yeah, I saw it. It looked really, really nice. Yeah, I mean, it's so good to have the physicals because these are really big too. You can get a nice big one. It's super cool. So
yeah, these are not AI. These are like mini
these are free. These are
work that went into them. Yeah.
Jesus, decades before AI.
So,
however, I would not say that, David, there might be a little bit of AI involved with whatever you got going between your eyes, bro.
We are AI, bro. We are AI. All right. Love you all. We'll see you next time. God bless. Take care.